everybody. My name is Miki Speer. I am the host of tonight's show, The Healing Half. It is stormy where we are at in Minnesota, so I hope all of you are having a great time and staying safe tonight. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am a musician, author, former volleyball player. So, if you see a 6'4" redhead walking around, that's me, and host of tonight's show. For those of you who are new here, welcome. Be sure to drop a hello, even if you're watching it as a replay. I love to see all of your beautiful faces here. So I go through every single comment and I look up afterwards. So thank you all so much for being here. For those of you who are new and don't know me, my mom died when I was 13 years old from cancer. And it took me well over 10 years to accept I couldn't just avoid grieving. And finally, I had to face the fact that you have to walk through it. I also realized during that time that people didn't know how to act around me or my family. And I think this is a bigger thing outside of just grief, right? We don't know how to act around people who are going through really tough situations that we can't necessarily relate to. And so I wanted to start a show that addressed both, right? Healing and addressing our own wounds from grief and so many other topics like the one tonight, as well as learning how we can help others in situations that we really want to help. We just don't know how. And speaking of wanting to help, but not really sure how to know what to do, just drop me a quick yes or no. Are you in the Minneapolis area? If so, I have a really cool opportunity for you. So last week, my dad was on and we talked about widowers and how you can help families who are in need. And a lot of you reached out afterwards and said, "Thank you for that information. We really appreciate it. We want to know how to help people more." And so there's this really great organization for anybody who's in the Minneapolis metro area to connect with. And I'm going to pull up. And it is the COVID-19 Delivery Twin Cities Metro Facebook group. I just posted the link in the comments. What you have to do is you just have to join the group. And from there are 24 subgroups that you then would join in based off of what town you live in. You can see postings for local help, things like helping someone out with shopping or cooking a meal, or simply popping over to have a social distance talk with someone who is living alone. It is an absolutely amazing organization that was started by someone who listens to the show but prefers to remain anonymous. And it was completely designed to really help people who are immune compromised, really struggling with this pandemic from a lot of things, but especially loneliness and not being able to go out and do shopping. So if you are in the metro area and you are inspired to help, please click on that link, join that Facebook group, and just start to reach out to members in your community. And if you know somebody who is struggling, you can then post a need that they have in that group too. It is so powerful, and I just am again so grateful for the person who brought this group to my attention. I'm going to definitely send it in a follow-up email to all of you guys. So if you haven't yet, make sure you are on my email list because we are going to cover a ton of awesome topics tonight, but I'm going to send you all of those notes after the show, including the link to this. Okay, so who here believes in the power of music? I know I sure do. And if you haven't yet, please head to my website, which I just posted in the chat, and sign up for my email list. So then that way you can get in touch with tonight's wonderful musician who is a friend and a co-writer of mine, the wonderful Julie Eddy. And so Julie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mickey, so much for having me. As you said, we've co-written before, and we've known each other for I don't know, 8 months or so. But the song I'm going to play for you is called "Ever Since October." I wrote this. I live in Minneapolis, but I travel back and forth to Nashville quite a bit, and I wrote this um, in my Airbnb one night. And fall has, for the last several years, just kind of been an interesting time in my life and a time of change, not always in the best way, but this year, fall marked a change in a really good way. So, this is kind of my journey of taking something that you didn't always look at with a positive light and being able to do so. So this is called Ever Since October. I've stopped looking over my shoulder ever since October. Time has passed, but it's there in my mind. I was constantly running, running, running from what couldn't be outrun. So I set fire and left it all behind. I felt the heat and saw a glimpse of sunshine peeking through the smoke. And I used to hate to see the leaves change when the air started blowing colder. But time is a funny thing, and I'm discovering that there's beauty in not knowing exactly where you're going or why you've been where you've been. And there's something now about a cold autumn wind that brings me peace of mind and a little closure ever since October. Yeah, life seems a little slower ever since October. I'm starting to hear music in the silence, and there is a handsome man who always tells me I can, makes me fly without even trying. And when he wraps his arms around me, I feel more at home than I thought I ever could. And I used to hate to see the leaves change when the air started blowing colder. But time is a funny thing, and I'm discovering that there's beauty in not knowing exactly where you're going or why you've been where you've been. And there's something now about a cold autumn wind that brings me peace of mind and a little closure ever since October. Ever since October, I've been gaining closure. Ever since October, I've been getting older. No more looking over my shoulder. Ever since October, ever since October. I used to hate to see the leaves change when the air started blowing colder. But time is a funny thing, and I'm discovering that there's beauty in not knowing exactly where you're going or why you've been where you've been. And there's something now about it, cold autumn wind that brings me peace of mind and a little closure ever since October.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. You did so
Thank
well.
you.
We
I
are all
know.
so, so blessed by you. So if you like that song, give us a like on that button. Julie, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your beautiful
Thank
gift.
you.
I cannot wait to co write again with you once things start to open up. And for those of you who are listening, we wrote a great song together called Hey Sister. So let's have you back on soon to sing that one too.
I would love that. Thank you so
Yay!
much for having me. Thank you for doing this. This is so inspiring. You're just so wonderful. I can't wait to
Oh,
see you in person soon.
yes, looking forward to it. Thank you, Julie. And for all of you who are wondering, wow, she's super talented. How do I stay in touch with her? Make sure you're on my email list, which I did send out earlier. It's just mikispeer.com, and you will have a link to her social media. You'll have a link to the lyrics, and you'll get a link to another video of her watching it so you can re listen to the song when you're ready. So thank you again, you guys, for being on the show. We are just so, so, so grateful for all the musicians who bless us with their talent. So last week, who was here last week, by the way? Just give me a yes or no, whether you liked the show or not. We did a situational deep dive where we interviewed my dad about what it was like to be a widower with kids at home. I loved last week. Let me know if you did too. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, it was a heavy that was a heavy topic, right? But we all learned so much, which is so good. But we can't be heavy every week or it'll just get too depressing. So tonight we are back with what I call our normal train, which is where we are going to be talking about a topic that applies to almost everybody and is in definite need of some healing. So tonight we are talking about embracing our body, and not just that, but actually loving our body. And if you're wondering what happened to the dearly missed dedication, no worries, it's still here. I just wanted to give you the preface of that because tonight's dearly missed dedication is actually linked to our topic. But for those of you who are new and are like, what on earth are they talking about? Just know that grief is such a passion of mine. And every single week, I do want to tie whatever we're talking about back to grief just a little bit and take time out of every single episode to honor the fact that we have all lost people. And those people were so, so, so important to us and made us who we are today. So, if you would like to have one of your loved ones featured on the show or give the opportunity as a gift to someone you know who is grieving, so that way we can learn a little bit more about them and as a group continue on their legacy, please do so. Just reach out to me after the show, whether it's Messenger, get on my email list and email me back, whatever works best for you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. So, tonight's dearly missed dedication is someone a lot of you were introduced to last week when my dad talked about losing my beautiful, beautiful mom. Oh, and isn't that such a great picture? Um, and and I wanted to talk about legacy for a half second before we bring the wonderful Emma on. So she's here, but we're going to link all three of these topics together with legacy, which is so, so, so important for us to remember and be able to be grounded in our loved ones passing. When we carry out their legacy, we stay connected with them. So it's just such a beautiful thing. But legacy there's two sides to that coin, right? There's, of course, the things we want to continue, and there's the things we are, really excited about sharing with the world that they can no longer do. But the other side of the coin that a lot of grief people don't talk about, but I'm not a lot of grief people, so I'm going to talk about it and I don't care if people don't like it because it's neat to be talked about, is the importance of remembering that the people we love were not perfect. And if we put them on this perfect pedestal, it can make us not give grace to ourselves. And so we need to acknowledge that the person that we lost had struggles too. It doesn't mean we don't miss them anymore. In fact, it means they're human and it makes their love and that relationship even more impactful. So in my book, which is My Heart Still Remembers, which is free to every single one of you, it's right on my website. Or if you want a nice hard copy, that link is in that comment section. On section 2, we talk about legacy, and the two sides of that coin. And that's what I wanted to highlight tonight going into one of my favorite topics. And I've been so excited to have Emma on the show like since 2 months ago when we booked this thing. And we're going to be talking about body image. And the reason why, you might be thinking, how on earth is this all connected? Well, I'll tell you. So tonight's dedication is to my beautiful mom, and I'll even go a step further and say her mom, who also recently passed away, my grandma Louise. They both were so beautiful and so amazing, and just hearts of gold. Um, but they were not perfect. One thing I know that was an unintentional legacy for both of these women was the fact that I know that they, like all of us, most of us at least, wish they could have changed the way they look. I remember growing up, and they were not chronically paralyzed by their issues at all. I'm not saying that, but I remember from an early age, both hearing both of them say things like, "I can't go out yet. I'm not ready. Man, if I could only just get rid of this and this, and I can't wear that. Look how bad my butt looks." Like comments like that. I just grew up with those, and I thought that was normal. And I want to be honest with you guys. Of course, what is the show if we are not honest, right? I still struggle with thinking this way. And I used to believe that that would eventually stop, that I would eventually stop caring about things like my weight, my skin, my everything, right? Um, Once I got older, I just assumed, when I'm like my grandma's age, I won't really care about that stuff anymore, and I'll finally be free of these thoughts that race through my head that I try not to have, but man, it's just such a battle. And then about well, this would have been back in February. I was hanging out at the VFW with my grandma, who is now deceased, and her friends, and one of her 87-year-old friends. Um, Someone complimented that they liked her sweater, and she said something along the lines of, "Ugh, thanks, it hides this fat belly." And she started to grab her very thin belly. And I just had this kind of awakening moment where I was just like, oh my gosh, this is not just going to go away, is it? These 87-year-olds, like, you would kind of think this would not be an issue anymore, but it's still a problem. And that's when I realized this is a lot deeper than what I thought it was. So I know it's up to me to break this generational cycle that clearly has been passed down, but it's really hard to do. But all of us, every single one of us, have people in our lives who look up to us, and who, even if you can't do it for yourself, do it for them, right? So tonight, I want to invite on the wonderful, the amazing Emma Gardner or Garrison, I'm so sorry, who is a
That's okay.
self worth coach, which is unbelievable. So, Emma, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
We are just
Yeah.
so honored to have you here. And I'm just like, the fact that your life's work is to help people love themselves is just unbelievable. So, thank you for that. Do you mind talking a little bit about why do you think, with just your experience with coaching and helping people through this, why do so many of us struggle with wishing we looked different?
Yes, this is such a beautiful question. And I love that you brought in the generational trauma that's sort of overlaid in this whole situation around how we
Right.
relate to our bodies. I think there's a couple of things to hit on here. Number one, we make a lot of meaning out of our body. So we make it mean I mean, you fill in the blank for you. You make it mean I'm not going to find love until my body looks a certain way. I'm not going to find the
Mm,
perfect job until my body looks a certain way. I'm not going to have a certain group of friends. I'm not going to, we like attach so much meaning to our physical
yeah.
vessels. And that whole like, if I have this, then I'll have that is really paralyzing for a human being because the truth is like
Mm,
there is no there.
yeah.
There is no there. So you think about well, we'll get into that in a minute. The big picture around I have so much to say.
This is
The
great.
big
Keep
picture
going.
around why we struggle is like the expectation of what the media puts out or what businesses are built on us buying hair extensions or eyelash
Mm,
extensions or fake tan or nails or whatever. All of that stuff's great. Like I'm here for it. I'm not bashing on it. But what we also get to recognize is over time, the ideal body has changed. Like you go all the way
mm,
back to the Italian Renaissance days, and it's like these big curvy bodies are what everybody wanted. And then you go like into the next era and a super skinny tiny little athletic build is what you want. And then you go into the next area and like curves are back. So there's all of this back and forth all of the time. And our patterning, our programming and conditioning tells us to go find whatever is in front of us, which is always changing. So we're chasing a moving target.
That's
It's like
exactly what it feels
whatever.
like.
Yeah. And the truth is, you talk to people, and I'm one of those people who have lost a significant amount of weight. And it's like the before and after, my internal problems were still there.
Mm.
We attach this meaning that like everything will be fixed when I have the perfect body. And if you don't do the inner work, that's not the truth, you know?
I
Yeah.
cannot relate more, and I also, lost a lot of weight last year, and it's amazing how, and we'll get into this another time, but A, people treat you different, and that's just a fact, and I was like, "Whoa, that's kinda weird," and then 2, I thought, "Oh, once I hit this weight goal, I'll be fine, and once I hit that weight goal, I'll be fine," and then that goalpost just kept moving because I wasn't there yet, and so it's like
Mhm.
I passed my goal and I wasn't even happy. I was like, "Ugh, keep going." So I totally, I'm so happy that you're here. So thank you. So my
Yeah.
next question for you is, okay, so we've established the why. So the next kind of step is, why is it important for us to have this conversation, to do this work? Is it really a problem to critique
Mm.
ourselves as we walk by? Like, is that really that big of a deal?
Yeah, I mean, that's to each their own. But I think when you take a second to hop off autopilot and really have a look at like all of the programming and conditioning, which is totally normal. That's not like we're being programmed. It's like that's just how our brains work. We take in information and
Yeah.
then make meaning of it. Um, it's up to each person if they believe that's a big problem. For me, it doesn't work
Mm,
because it ripple effects into every other part of my life. I
mm,
have internal dialogue going on. When you look in the mirror, you pass yourself by in a reflection and you're like, oh gosh, do I really look that way? That then generates energetically, that creates what money you do or don't call in, that creates what type of partnership you call in, that creates what kind of job you call in. And it's all tied back to that self-worth and that self-trust game. And if you're having this inner dialogue that you're not enough just the way you are, which like in theory sounds so cheesy and you can roll your eyes at it like, oh, you're perfect just the way you are. But the truth is, like, your worth hasn't changed. It doesn't change from the day that you're born until the day that you
Mm.
die. So
praise God.
our brains,
Yeah.
yeah. So like our brains are creating all of this rhetoric that I need to have a perfect body, or I mean, fill in the blank, the perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect boyfriend, whatever it is, before I'm happy.
Mm,
And it really gets to like, we get to tap back in and create a conscious choice because we put so much weight on any of those areas. But like, specifically, when we're talking about our bodies, we have this perception that our body is the problem and that our body is the solution. And like the irony and what we were talking about, when you lose the weight or you have the toned arms or whatever it is that you're like trying to accomplish, your problem is not solved. So truly your
mm.
relationship to your body is both the problem and the solution. Your body is irrelevant. Like its physical vessel is not important in this
I love
conversation.
that. Oh my gosh. I'm going to go back through and like highlight every single thing that you're saying because everything is speaking to my soul. But I loved the thing that you said, that our relationship to our body is the solution, not our body itself. That's
Mhm,
powerful.
mhm,
So that said, what activities, when you meet with people, either in, like I know you mentioned earlier, a group setting or one-on-one, do
mhm.
you recommend that people do, or say to ourselves, in order to kind of recenter on the truth that we are enough? Like, what should we do about this?
Oh, there are so many different layers to this, and I think it's a very personal journey, right? Because
Mm.
our belief systems are created from our experiences, and we've all had such different experiences, so it really varies person to person. Um, I think the main thing is embodiment. So, how do you, in the personal development world, there's a lot of like, write your affirmations out and like say them to yourself in the mirror. And those are great. I'm not like bashing on the mirror affirmations or whatever, but there's a difference between just like regurgitating and saying it out loud or writing it down and like really just taking a second, like oh, I am worthy. And like
Mm.
feeling that in your bones, with unconditional, like there are no conditions. I am not worthy when I am not enough when it's just like,
Mm.
that's just it.
Yeah.
That's it, period. So there's this embodiment that comes along with those affirmations. If we're talking body specifically, I mean, you think about our physical vessel holds emotion, it holds trauma, it holds all of the inner work that I work with my clients on that we don't see as like a problem or related to our body per se, or we like write it off as, I was a kid, it's no big deal, I'm over it. The second you hear somebody say like, I worked through that, you're like, okay, did you? You know, there's a lot of that goes on. But our bodies hold that emotion and hold the trauma, and emotion is energy in motion. So one of the things that I always suggest is just get your body moving. But here's the kind of catch 22 here is I also recommend ditching any form of metric.
Okay.
So I'm talking steps, calories burned, weight on the scale, measurements on your body, because these generate judgments. These tell us if we're
Yeah.
doing good or bad, if I need to work out a little longer because I only burned 600 calories and I want to burn 1,000, or like whatever the rhetoric is. They create a lot of judgment for us. And
Mm.
when I first thought about this, it was like, there's no way I can get rid of metrics. There's just no way. I'm very attached to them. They tell me a lot. They tell me if I did a good job or not a good job. They tell me if I'm making progress. And like anybody who also has that same rhetoric, this is especially for you because we're making so much meaning out of that data.
Mm.
Yeah. So being able to really move your body and really just be with yourself just because it feels good, as opposed to needing to reach a certain goal, that's a pretty good indicator to tell how deep your worth is associated with your body.
Okay. So I'm going to recap that just to make sure I understand. So you're saying like if I'm kind of struggling to with, as we almost all are, you know, to love myself, but I need to keep
Mm-hmm.
moving because that's good. I need to be moving my body, but I need to detach that from I need to be able to do a plank for a minute and I need to hit 220 and I need to do all this stuff and instead just be in a spot where you can move without metrics. And then that last step, could you mind just reiterating? And that last step is just see how you feel, and kind of then assess what the problem is.
Yeah. So we just want to notice, like, am I moving my body to feel good, to
Mm.
feel energized? Or it really comes down to like, are you going to the gym because you hate your body, or are you going to the gym because you love your body? Right. So
Mm.
it's looking at the come from of like, am I going there to change my body, or am I going there to let it move? And
Sure.
so much
And
of what we're taught is
not,
like, you
yeah.
go there to change it.
Right. So if you are someone like me and a lot of people on the call, and this was actually a specific question from an audience member, so I'm so glad we're diving in. And for all of you guys listening, just know you can always send us questions before the show if you've got some questions for our upcoming speaker. So let's say you are on that other side of the coin where the relationship with food and the relationship with the gym has always been pretty unhealthy.
Mm.
How do you kind of cross that threshold? Like any tips to just like, because it seems scary to go cold turkey and just like, I'm not going to care about that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big step. So the first thing that I would remind everyone is like, we can't go from 0 to 100. So we can't go from I'm going to the gym because I hate my body and I want it to change to I love my body, it's so great and she's beautiful and she does all the wonderful things for me. Like, that's unrealistic. So we get to move through neutral first. We get to go
Mm.
slow. We get to just look like 2 steps ahead of us. It could be I hate my body to I don't hate my body all of the time, to I can see how somebody else's curvy body is also really beautiful. I just don't see it in me quite yet. To, oh, I think I can see that my curvy body is also beautiful. Right? So there's like different steps. It's not a one and done. It's not a quick fix. And that comes back to the come from, right? It's like, how how do I relate to eating healthy? How do I relate to going to the gym? And really taking a deep look. And I think that's on the surface, my work is about body. It's about relating to your body in a healthier way, but really underneath it all, it's like really doing the inner work. It's taking the time with your inner child. It's reparenting yourself. It's taking a look at the complex traumas, the shock traumas that came up in your life, and then healing. Because our relationship to our body is just unhealed trauma.
Yeah. Oh, and we're on the healing half, which is so perfect. So thank you. That definitely, I think, gives me a little bit more freedom. Yeah, like you don't have to. I feel sorry. I'm kind of spittering in circles here. I feel like to go from 0 to 100, like you said, I almost feel guilty when I'm not at 100. So I thank you for giving me permission to be moving there. And I hope for all of us listening to the call, giving yourselves permission to. I feel like there's almost shame when you don't feel this way, and then we just collapse back down to 0. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's it's really interesting because the whole body positivity movement that's happening right now, like, so beautiful. I love it. And I think there's a gap in that we see these beautiful curvy women on all over Instagram and social media who are like, body positivity, owning my curves, whatever, love it. And it almost creates another layer of, oh, if my body's curvy, I should also love my body. It's like creating more of that expectation gap of, this is where I am and this is where everybody else is. It could be the same, like, this is where everybody else fit body is and here's where mine is. There's still a gap. Here's somebody who's curvy loving her body, and here's me curvy not loving my body, and there's a gap here. So it's like we've missed the let's talk about the how we get there. Let's talk about moving through neutral. Let's talk about, like, doing your affirmations in the mirror are awesome, but that's not the only work to be done.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. And what I love too about this work is, again, it's not just teenagers. It's not just preteens like struggling with their body. It's like that's the stereotype. I really think everyone at any age, any size, anything can work on loving yourself more. So Emma, I'm gonna post your way to get in touch with you in the comments, and everybody, please know you are going to have this in your follow-up email as well. And I would highly recommend, if any of this touched on a nerve for you, please follow that whisper and reach out to Emma. So what we also like to do, Emma, on the show is not only help ourselves, but let's say someone in the audience is really confident and they love themselves, and that's so great. And I hope we all are that way soon. So that's somebody, but they're living with someone who's struggling, and who makes comments like, oh, if only my arms, which again, we're all working on. How would that person help? What words would be a good thing to say in that moment?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. And it's a little bit tricky because to some degree, we all have to opt into this growth, right? It's not necessarily like we can't force somebody. I mean, you think about it, this is an extreme analogy, but like, if you have somebody who's an addict and you're forcing them into rehab, they're not choosing to say, like, I'm ready to make a change. They're not going to be as successful or as effective had they chosen, like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. So there's a certain level of, like, needing to be aware and sort of the eye open of, oh, I can see that this is not super effective for me. And sort of like a surrender to saying, there's something to change. There's something to look at here because my relationship to myself is not super healthy. So prefacing with that, I would ask questions. I would just get curious. I would say to them, tell me more about that. Let me learn from you. Like, get to the curiosity point with them that you can learn the meaning that they're making about that extra flap on their arm or whatever it is. And just understand from them, like, ooh, what are you making that mean about yourself? Does that make you less than? And, you can prompt them with questions that just allow their little wheels in their head to turn and to really sort of instill that doubt of, like, oh, does that make you less than because your body looks that way? The other thing too that I would touch on here is this idea of, like, this has been really helpful for me in all forms of personal development, but body specifically. Like, oh, would you ever teach a 6-year-old that. Maybe it's a niece that you have. Maybe it's a daughter that you have. Would you say that to her? Would you say to her, look at that flap on your arm? Like
Mm.
you also have that little girl or little boy inside of you now. Like that person lives in you and they're wounded and they're sad and they're hurt and they just want to be loved. And every time we have that like self-critic game going on, that
Mm.
little child is rewounded.
I'm like crying right now because that was so beautiful. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for your time today. I so appreciate that. Thank you
Yeah.
for putting all the wonderful light into the world, and you are welcome back on the show anytime. So we look forward to seeing you soon. And everybody, get in touch with her. Make sure you're following her because she's putting out awesome content that you're going to want to be part of. So thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm like very active on DMs and stuff. So any questions you have, definitely reach out.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Well, as we conclude that episode, I'm going to bring this back up just to kind of seal one more time why it's important that we do this work. Again, look at my beautiful mom. She's stunningly beautiful, right? And yet, I know from being that cute little cutie in the red hat from growing up, like I remember dialogue. And if I put a photo of each and every single one of you on the screen, smiling, being happy, all of us would say, wow, that person looks great. And yet, we would probably be pretty hard on ourselves. So this work is so important. I know I've been convicted like to not just sweep these thoughts and bad things under the rug because generationally it needs to stop with someone. And I'm choosing for it to be me, and I'm really excited for it to hopefully for you to choose that too. So when we love ourselves, we give other people permission to love themselves better. Can you think of a better thing to end on with the healing half? So thank you all so much for being here. Next week, we have a speaker coming on who's going to talk to us about what to do with our grief. How do we join a grief group? What are grief groups? And it's going to be a really good thing for you to know more about, especially if you know somebody who's struggling with grief. So that way, when you talk about grief groups and you kind of offer that as a solution to them, you actually know what they are and you know how they work. So whether you personally are going to want a grief group or you're going to be kind of throwing that out to people as an option, you're going to want to join us next week because we have a phenomenal speaker joining us who has led hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of grief groups of all different kinds, here to give us just some awesome tidbits about them. And you're going to learn some great metaphors along the way too. So thank you again to Julie for being here, for sharing her music, Emma for sharing her wonderful wisdom, for the people who created the beautiful ministry, volunteer service of COVID-19 delivery. Please check them out. And of course, if you haven't yet, be sure to work on some of that legacy stuff like I've had to do with my grandma and my mom. And I love them so much. But part of grieving them is understanding that they weren't perfect and that part of their legacy is on my shoulders to keep moving forward in things that they weren't able to finish. So I charge that with you all this week. May you go out and have a wonderful, joyous, healing full week. And I will see you next Tuesday at 7:30. Thank you all so much for being here. Bye, you guys.